Hi, my friends. Welcome to this week's podcast. Not only this week, but this year. It's a brand new year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Brought in some friends for today's episode. Our friend Keith from Grassroot Catholic returns to the show, this time as a co-host. We talk about our Christmas Mass experiences and how I had one of the worst Mass experiences of my entire life. And it got into... we recorded this before this week's whole discourse on the internet about kids and Mass, and that's what we talked about. So we were ahead of the party, I guess. We also talk about piety and how sometimes we have to choose love even if we're not in love, but how sometimes that can get old. So how do we navigate that in our relationships, including our relationship with God? And also we have a guest this week, first-time guest, Father Uncle Sam. It's not his real name, but he's the priest recruiter for the diocese of the military. There's a whole world I didn't know about when it comes to Catholicism and its partnership with the military and how one becomes a priest in the military, what they do. It's a really fun conversation. I hope that you enjoy it. If you do, please subscribe. And my challenge for you this year, a lot of times at the beginning of the new year, people are looking for new things to get involved in their faith, try to improve their lives by going to the gym and going to Mass more or whatever, right? But if you know anybody like that, or if you want to help encourage people to get a little bit more Catholicism in their life, share the show with them. Hit subscribe for yourself. Share this with a friend. We hope that you enjoy today's episode with Mr. Grassroot Catholic and Mr. Father Uncle Sam. Two fake names for these people that you'll meet here now. Enjoy. Hello there, and welcome into Forte Catholic. This is our first episode of the year, a brand new year with a brand new co-host. Our guest co-host today is Mr. Grassroot Catholic himself, Keith, redacted last name. Hello, Keith Redacted.
Hello, thank you.
We're glad. Yeah, thank you. It was until you stepped over me saying thank you. Welcome to co-host world, where you just get made fun of constantly. So you've been on the show before. I went and looked it up. You were on another special episode. You were number 299. So right before the big celebration, we're like, hey, let's get Keith on. And that was last summer. And you had some feedback for me on that episode after you heard it air.
Well, it depends on what kind of feedback you're talking. If it sounds like I'm part of the Lollipop Guild, then yes, that's yeah, that was awful. My voice, I had a mic that just was awful, and it made me sound, was it an octave higher? Yeah. A couple octaves higher. Yeah.
You sounded pretty strange. So hopefully, it sounds good to us currently. Hopefully, by the time we're done with it, you sound better now. So this is a little bit of redemption for you.
Yes, it is 100%.
You've upgraded your mic. I'm very proud of you.
Yeah. It's a USB mic, so it's not 100% perfect, but it works.
I am 100% perfect. I have done it. I've been to confession recently. We're all good. So we have just celebrated Christmas. We have just celebrated the New Year. And you and I are going to talk a little bit about our Christmas experience. We're going to talk a little bit about how we're moving into the New Year. But before we do that, for the 8 people on the internet that haven't yet interacted with Grassroot Catholic on Instagram, why don't you tell us a little bit about Grassroot Catholic and who Keith Redacted is?
So Keith Redacted, that's silly. So yeah, Grassroot Catholic is just an Instagram channel that I guess I created a couple years back, primarily because I was kind of bored during the pandemic, and I wanted to use my talents that I had procured during my time at Arizona State University. I got a theater degree, and so yeah, I needed to do something to get the creative juices flowing. And as a geriatric millennial, I just wanted to help other geriatric millennials or millennials in general discover or rediscover lost traditions and things about our faith that I didn't know about, wish I knew about back in the day. So I thought I'd do that with a little bit of humor mixed in. And yeah, that's kind of been the road until today. So
I just learned a new wrinkle of this. You've never mentioned that you went to Arizona State before. I had no idea that this was all coming from your skills that you learned from the devil.
It's okay.
The Arizona Sun Devils are your mascot, and that's where what you're saying is you got all your inspiration and skills from the devil in order to start Grassroot Catholic.
Taylor, yes, okay. Yes. All right.
Got him. We got him, guys. FBI, go.
As someone who has a lot of family who are U of A fans, I've always had to practice saying, yeah, no one's perfect. So it's sanctifying and humbling.
I went to a bowl game when like a football bowl game when I was real little. I was like probably 10 years old. And we went to a bowl game at the Sun Devil Stadium, and there's just a big, 10-foot, 15-foot devil on top of the football stadium. And little 10-year-old me, I'd be watching the football game, then I'd look up, and be like, "Oh no, I'm going to go back to the football." Revert my eyes back to the field because it was terrifying for small little Taylor.
Fun fact: did you know the original logo of the Sun Devil was drawn by someone who worked at Disney? So that's why I don't know what the logo looks like today. I haven't been keeping up, but OG logo was drawn by someone who worked for Disney.
Very interesting. So Disney and Grassroot Catholic both came out of the devil. That's what I'm hearing you say. So you and I have become friends, and we've DM here and there. I think my favorite thing from our friendship is I just we were on Instagram, and I did it has a video call thing within Instagram, and there was just a couple of times where I just called you randomly because you're like my one of my trad friends, and I'm like, hey, every time I have something trad, I want to either something good from the trad world or something bad from the trad world. I'm like, hey, I'm calling Mr. Redacted. We got to talk about this. And a couple of times it's just been a little 3-minute video call, and you're like, what? But you always answer. A couple of times, I think we mentioned it the last time, you and I had a theological discussion while you were sitting at a bus stop getting sprayed by the water of cars driving by. So, we have a grand old history here.
We do. Yeah.
So I have a couple of, I want to talk a little bit about my Christmas, and we'll talk about yours eventually. But I think you'll enjoy or hate my Christmas weekend experience. So, as all anybody talked about in Advent was Mary, did you know, and arguing about what masses we had to go to on Christmas weekend.
Right.
Like that was the only thing anybody on the Catholic internet talked about for the last month or so. And I kind of land in the camp where, I don't know, man, the bishops say we have to go twice, but canon law, I'm pretty sure there's a loophole and you can just go once as long as you go to a certain one. That's kind of where I landed intellectually. But so anytime I disagree with the church intellectually, but the bishops are saying, hey, we have to do this other thing, I tend to do what the bishops say just in case, right? Even if I disagree, right, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be obedient, right? So that's kind of where I was going into the crazy weekend, the fourth Sunday of Advent for a day and a half, and then Christmas for a day and a half. Mm-hmm. So we decided to go Saturday evening vigil for Sunday, and then Sunday evening vigil for Christmas, for Monday, right? So that's the decision we made. We got the whole family going. We're in I traveled to my parents' house, so we're going to these parishes, and we all have some rough memories and encounters in a lot of the parishes in the town. So it was very hard to decide where we're going to go. So we just decided to go to the most neutral church. There's 3 little towns, 3 little churches in these 3 little towns. We decided to go to the most neutral church on Saturday evening for Advent. And I had the single worst mass experience of my entire life at that church.
Wow.
Your
entire life?
My entire life. It was rough.
Okay.
I've been angry. It's a top 10 me being angry moment, period. I've never been this angry in a church. Maybe once. It might be second, but yeah. That's another story for another day when people aren't listening. But it's the angriest I've ever been in mass. My heart rate was about to explode. I've been having some heart problems, and I started the new medicine. Even the new medicine couldn't help with this experience. And I tweeted about it, and I was like, I was like, hey, I just had the worst experience I've ever had in mass. And someone asked, one of your trad friends asked, was it a liturgy thing or a people thing? I was like, well, it was 80% people. It was 80% the people in front of us, and I'll explain why in a second. And it was 20% liturgical, which the other bad experience was 80% liturgical, 20% people. So you and I have had some discussions about liturgy. You tend to be a little bit more traditional than me. You go to the Latin Mass solely? Do you solely go to the Latin Mass?
So yeah, we go. There's been a few times where For instance, we had a time where I was on the freeway and a tire blew, and we just weren't going to make mass. So we ended up going to, Novus Ordo and stuff like that. Like I'm not one of those trads where like it's heretical to go to the Novus Ordo. It's like, we go if we have to, like if there's any circumstances, but we try to treat our parish like it's our parish and not try to hop around too much. But that's the extent of it. Like it's nothing liturgically. Yeah.
So the reason we went to this parish was one, because the priest is really, really good, man. He's just super welcoming. He does, you would actually, like when it comes to Novus Ordo stuff, it's actually one of the more traditional Novus Ordo. Like we go and there's not a full altar rail, but they do communion like there is an altar rail. Like we all walk up there and typically people kneel or whatever. There's not kneelers, but everybody stands and either receives on the tongue or receives on the hand or whatever. But like, I don't even know how to explain that. But instead of like going up in rows like you typically do at a Novus Ordo mass, you go up to the altar and the priest moves and you stand there. Am I explaining this well?
Yeah, I think I'm picking up what you're putting down.
It's like traditional altar rail, just without the altar rail. So you go up and, they distribute that way.
Okay, got it.
Like just the physical space of the church doesn't have the altar rail. But the priest is usually really good. Like he runs like a pretty tight ship liturgically, and he's a great homilist, and the music is always very good. We typically go, like when I typically go to this mass, it's like the Sunday evening, and the music is really good. They do the thing where like kind of the balance between the Novus Ordo and like the traditional thing where they're like, hey, we're going to do the opening hymn, but when we're done with the opening hymn, like in the same key of that song, we're going to sing what is it called? The collect or whatever, the opening song, opening little thing that we're supposed to sing instead of an opening hymn, whatever. So pretty traditional place, but like the two of the primary reasons that we went there was the priest is a very good homilist and the music is very good. But because of this strange weekend of like, hey, we have to go to mass twice within a 48 hours period, I'm pretty sure they put all the good musicians went to the Christmas mass that we weren't at, and we got the like D team, F team, G team of musicians.
Dang.
And the priest, because again, he sang a lot of masses this weekend. Like I understand it. It was just kind of frustrating because of what one of the reasons we chose to go there. He did not give the homily, and he's a tremendous homilist. And it was a deacon, which like, okay, fine. Like I like intellectually I understand it. But have you ever listened to like, it's kind of become a trend over the last few years. I'm like a white noise guy when I sleep. I need white noise. But have you ever heard the like sleep stories or like, hey, listen to this person talk and it'll put you to sleep?
Yeah.
That was the deacon's homily. Like content wise, very good. I'm actually later in the show going to share some of the content of what he shared really spoke to me. But dude, it was so hard to stay awake. He would talk like this. And Jesus was born in a stable. And it went on for 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. And probably was stuffy in there, I'd assume too, like a little warm. And then just like the perfect, like the planets aligning to you just to probably nod off or just daydream.
Yeah, perfect nap time. I was about to grab this blanket that's pinned up behind me, just like wrap it around my body and go to sleep in my pew. But that was only 20% of it. That kind of stuff. It's like, okay, it's not exactly why we came, but we've all lived with bad or quiet, sleepy homilies, and we've all dealt with music that isn't the best. Like that's just a normal part of being Catholic, right? That's just the 20%. It only knocked it down to 80. What knocked it down from an 80 to a 0 was the family in front of us. And I've railed about this before. It was like probably 2-3 years ago, so I'm not going to do the whole rant again. But parents, 4 kids in front of us. One was a baby. I'm not mad at the baby. I'm mad at everybody else in the scenario. The 3 other kids, probably 6, 8, 10, 12. So they're somewhere in that range, right? Just zero parenting in mass. Zero. Like daughter, like constantly elbowing dad, like fighting him, and he's just standing there with his hands clasped, praying, engaged. like whatever the kids could do to fidget, like opening and closing, like the little thing that holds the gather hymnals or whatever, the little hymn books and the missalettes.
Yeah.
He was just constantly like moving, like there was a screw loose and he was like, pow, 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 pow. Like it was like, like daddy daycare inside of this mass, dude. And it was one of those things, like it went on for, there's an hour 20 mass or whatever. Like it went on for an hour and 20 minutes where like it's driving me. It's so distracting. It is like, I think it's a pet peeve for me of like parents not parenting their kids just in general, but then especially like in mass, it's like, I don't know, man. Like I remember the olden days where like we would make a little giggle and we were grounded for a day and we got no donuts after mass. And like dad gave me the eyes like he was going to kill me, like, and then so it seemed to be a pretty traditional, the adults seem to be pretty traditional. And I don't know, I've seen this trend where like a lot of more traditional parents are like kind of seem to have this idea of like, we're just going to let our kids be kids at mass. They're just kids, like kind of, which like I can understand to a point. Right. But like at some point when your kid's throwing a temper tantrum and you're just ignoring it and having like everybody else in the parish has to deal with it. It's rough. So I wanted to know, one, I typically go to Novus Ordo. You typically go to Latin Mass, but you're around a lot of more traditional parents. Have you seen that trend, or is this just like a rare enough thing that you haven't experienced it? Of like the parents are going to have their prayer time with God and never address the kids, whether they're being very quiet or incredibly loud and annoying.
I've seen it a couple of times where, like you said, the parents are just kind of tuning their children out, and it's like, I get what you're trying to do, but because what you're doing, it's distracting everybody. And I try to like remember, like, yeah, the mass isn't about me, but then like he should know that the mass isn't about him either, by like him ignoring, or her ignoring their children. So it's kind of like, are you aware of your children? And my daughter is like, you see a lot of these families that are just like very quiet and, like you said, very holy. And I'm like, wow, that's so beautiful. And then my daughter, she's just not like that. She's very like physical and she wants to talk. And like, I'm not going to leave her be. Like, I would love to ignore her and focus on the mass. Like, but that would just be incredibly rude to everybody else around me. So like, I miss the homilies quite often, just trying to get her to settle down. And because it's a Latin mass, it's a little bit longer. So we need that break, that little snack break, just because of the timing of the mass. It's one of those things where like I have to make the sacrifice in order for maybe to not disrupt people that don't have children or that really need to hear the homily or just be present with Jesus. So it's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
And it's one of those things. We're going to talk a little bit throughout our topics today of like finding this balance within Catholicism, right? Where like it is a good thing that like kids should be welcome at mass. Like on one hand, kids should be welcome at mass, and kids are going to coo and babble and make noise and eat Cheerios and probably when the bells go off, what was that? Like, why it's super quiet. Like kids are going to do kid stuff, right? Yeah. But on the other side, it's like we still have to be like. Respect, like loving your neighbor also applies to mass. Like you, like if like,
no, it doesn't. No, that's outside of mass. Okay,
we have to love God in mass and love neighbor outside. We can't do both in both. We got to pick and choose our battles.
Humans can't multitask,
right? Exactly. So, it's good to want to be reverent at mass, but it's also good to like be respectful of the people around you and like. A lot of times it's like, okay, maybe if we're 10% off from each other on that, okay, we can live with that. Like maybe I would love for you to parent your kid 10% more and you'd love for me to be 10% more understanding or whatever. But when it's like, when we're 100% different, it's just like, how did we get here? How did we get here? Right. To where like I'm sitting in mass and like my blood is starting to boil. I can literally feel my heart rate like going crazy. My blood pressure's going insane. Like, it's clearly affecting like my whole family sitting behind them. It's clearly affecting the people behind us. Like it's just like this whole section of church is dealing with this. And we're supposed to be here, celebrating our last Sunday of Advent, our last week of Advent. So having that experience after like did I really have to go twice in a weekend? Which like, okay, yes, no, whatever, right? But I chose to go. I chose to do the right thing, and this is how God rewards me. I was so frustrated.
It was a lesson. Deeper meaning there, Taylor.
What was it? Do you have any idea?
You needed the extra humility and the sanctification. Okay.
Does it count if I just griped about it the whole drive home?
Well, it depends. You were venting, okay? You weren't complaining, you were venting. Okay.
Yeah, I literally the like actual meaning of venting. I was 110 degrees. I needed to vent to go down the 10 so I could be healthy.
Yep. Exactly.
So, how was your Advent Christmas weekend masses?
I mean, it was comparatively uneventful, but it's still the same thing. It was like, I feel like people made this scheduling for mass this year confusing on their own end, as opposed to just like, well, you do this or that. I just kept it simple. We went to mass on Sunday and then we went to mass on Monday. Like I didn't want to make it any more confusing. So that's what we did. It's so strange. And I don't know if this is for the same for all traditional Latin mass parishes, but apparently the most attended mass is midnight mass. And so the next two masses are just not very attended much at all. So it was actually pleasant. I didn't have any issues, although we had to miss, I had to miss the homily. So that was kind of a bummer, but it's okay. It is what it is. Like kind of going back, I'd rather take one for the team than someone else have to suffer, my child just gallivanting across the pew. So
Amen. I think that's the healing I needed. It's like, hey, this trad guy gets it. He's not being a jerk to everyone.
There'll be time when I will miss this time. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
So I have to take, I think it's all mental. Like if you're going to be a parent, you have to realize that going to mass is going to be completely different. Like you won't be able to just sit and take it all in. That will come eventually again, but not for a while.
Yeah. I remember being, that brings me back to 10 years ago, like being a new dad, newly married. We had a kid 9 months after we got married. Like, I mean, it all happened pretty quick. And I was in confession with probably, I don't know, a month or two after my son was born. And I was just like, feeling so terrible. I was like, oh, my prayer life is terrible. I'm not paying attention in mass. I used to pray all the time. I used to read my Bible. And now all I can do is wipe butts and go to school and go to work. And it's terrible. And he's just like, it's just going to be different. It's just like, it's just a different call of holiness. It's like, yes, you still should pray. You still should try to pay attention to mass when you can. But like you said, it's just a different season. It requires a different, not that the call to holiness is different. It's just that how you act it out is going to look a little different. So
totally.
So nothing eventful in the negative way. Was there obviously you didn't hear one of the homilies, but was there any Christmas insights? Because I actually did get one Christmas insight from the Sleepy homily.
The one part that I remember before being escorted out of the mass was and this is, I don't know how well known this is, but I remember hearing about this previously, but it's always nice to hear that Jesus was born in a manger, which is where animals eat from, in a town called Bethlehem, which is bread. So it's like the Eucharist is in the nativity. Like you just have to look into it. So I thought that was really cool to hear again. But that was pretty.
Yeah, I always thought manger was just like, we really cleaned up the word trough for this Christmas story. It's a manger. He's in swaddling clothes. Oh, it's so sweet. No, it has a trough. There's probably pig slop all over him,
Yeah, there's remnants of rotten food probably in around the area. So no biggie.
Nasty.
Yeah.
The one that I got from the Sleepy homily was that the innkeeper was not the bad guy. The innkeeper gets such a bad rap. He was saying that he always gets he always plays like a kid's Christmas plays or whatever for school or for whatever. It's like, no, go away, Jesus, you're not welcome here. And it's like this. Everybody's like, oh, he's so anti-Christ, he's terrible. I'm like, nah, man, he's just a good businessman. It was a big holiday. Everybody was coming for the census. He filled up his hotel. Joseph didn't book online. This is not persecution. It's manufactured persecution that we think the innkeeper was a bad guy. He's just good at his job, and the inn was full. Maybe Joseph should have booked online for his pregnant wife so that they wouldn't have to eat from a trough.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you on that. Like, how did he know that this was like going to be the son of God? He didn't know. I can't imagine they'd be like, "Hey, do you know who's in here? Can we just maybe work something out?" No, that's
it's like, no, she's about to pop. I don't want that in here.
Yeah, that's funny.
It got me thinking. That's the part I heard, and then while he was trying to put me to sleep, I had to keep my mind awake. So I was like, it's just like Christians. They're always faking persecution. Like, oh, the world is so against us. I'm like, maybe we just need to figure it out. We can't blame all of our mistakes on the world. Maybe it was our incompetence at times.
We're so bored that we have to make these things.
Exactly. So the last thing I wanted to share so the Christmas Mass was our, the next evening for us was our redemption. We went, it was like a children's mass, like the children's choir sang, they're doing the Christmas carols. It's Christmas time now. We get in our Oh Holy Night and our Silent Night and all the Christmas traditional hymns, great, awesome. Yeah. The mass was good. It was cool. Like it was the parish I grew up in. So I saw a bunch of people that were influential in my life when I was a kid. Great. Just cool experience. But I legitimately thought of you on Christmas. This was Christmas Eve because we were there at the vigil.
Wow, I feel blessed. Thank you.
We had already scheduled that we were gonna talk, and we scheduled it with not really knowing what we were talking about. We kind of knew vaguely we were going to talk about Christmas, maybe the New Year or whatever, right? But I literally heard the last hymn, and I was like, got to tell Keith Redacted about this because we sang all the Christmas hymns all throughout Mass. And then for the closing hymn, we sang Feliz Navidad, the old Catholic classic, Feliz Navidad. What are your thoughts on this?
There's worse songs they could have sung.
You're in a very charitable mood today.
It's Christmas. I gotta be. No, seriously, like that. My expectations aren't very high anymore. So what, Feliz Navidad. There's Merry Christmas in there somewhere. So
Sure.
I'm okay. I'm okay with it. I would probably roll my eyes if I saw that happen. But
I rolled my eyes for you. I really did. I really did. I rolled my eyes for you. Even me, the less trad of the two of us, was like, come on. The only thing that made me feel better about this was another thing that I've shared before. Whenever Father says the Mass is ended, go in peace, the Mass is over. So if you want to sing Feliz Navidad, technically you're not singing Feliz Navidad at Mass because Mass ended 12 seconds ago.
You're very correct. That, if we're getting technical, Mass is over.
If stop glaring at me when me and my family are leaving early, because we're not leaving early. He said the Mass has ended. We all heard him. We all agreed this was over. Stop glaring at me, Kristen.
That's funny.
So, all right, that was our Christmases. So I'm glad that your experience was better than mine, and that you're. I just really loved my Christmas experience and laughed on your behalf and rolled my eyes on your behalf at my Christmas Mass. So I'm glad yours was uneventful. The coming of the King was uneventful for you. Awesome.
Shut it, Taylor. Obviously. No, I'm just a little disappointed that nothing crazy happened. And yeah, I'm a little jealous that you had an eventful Christmas Mass.
Have you ever? I mean, we all know that eventful things happen in the Novus Ordo all the time. Have you ever had a eventful, weird thing happen at Latin Mass, or is that never once?
No, nothing weird. I mean, every once in a while, you get some interesting individuals that happen to come in during Mass, and the ushers are amazing at our parish. Like they as soon as they see someone come in and there's something a little off, they hey, how you doing? Are you this is the first time you hear? Like they know to kind of.
Is the thing that's off the fact that they're speaking in English?
Yes, they're not speaking in Latin. 100%. No, so they're really. I've heard some stories, but it's never been one. It's never on a Sunday Mass. Those are pretty kept. I guess, I mean, these ushers typically are police or, someone in that particular realm. So they're very good at their job. Let's just say there's never any incidents, but
literally the liturgy police.
The liturgy police. Yeah. I've seen on the other side of the spectrum, the theatrical plays of the gospel reading, which I'm not a fan of. Taylor, fan, but anyways.
We're gonna take a break. When you and I are gonna resume in our third segment, we're gonna talk a little bit about New Year's and you're like in my mind at least, you're like the king of piety. You talk about piety and reverence all the time because of your your love for. I'm not saying you're pious. I'm just saying you talk about it a lot. So we're gonna talk about it. But right now we're gonna take a break and we're gonna throw it to an interview that I did with Father Uncle Sam, and I'm gonna explain nothing else. You're just gonna stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. If you are listening to this the week that this comes out, I am currently in Ireland. I am traveling overseas for the first time. I'm speaking at a youth conference for the Syro-Malabar Youth Movement over in Dublin, Ireland. This is the first time I've ever gone overseas. The first time, obviously, I've spoken overseas because you have to travel to do that. I'm really, really excited. Speaking at 2-day youth conferences for kids in the Syro-Malabar Rite of Catholicism, which is the Indian Rite over in Ireland. We'll be talking about that more on next week's episode, another reason to subscribe. But it's a great chance to tell you that I am still booking events to speak, lead worship at parishes, conferences, Catholic schools, whatever for this year. The best way you can find out more about what I can do, my speaking, my music, leading retreats, leading parish missions, whatever, is at fortecatholic.com/booking, FORTE Catholic.com/booking. So if you're involved in your parish, or if you're the priest, or you work there, or you're like a volunteer or something in a ministry, I'd love to come. I've spoken to youth for years. I've been speaking to adults now for a few years. Men's retreats, I guess not women's retreats. I can come for a second, but I'm not going to chill out, I guess. Conferences, Catholic schools, whatever you have going on. If you need a speaker, musician, retreat leader, I would love to do it. Check out more of what I've done in the past, including what I'm doing in Ireland, over at fortecatholic.com/booking. Thanks. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am still Taylor Schroll, but we've got a new face and a new name here for you today. We've got a fancy guest today from the Army. He's a priest, Army recruiter, Father Peter Pomposello. We've got some Italian friends over here. Good, nice to see you. Nice to meet you here in person for the first time. We've talked over on Instagram primarily, where you are fr.unclesam, which is a lot easier to say than your real name. I see why you did the branding there.
Well, that branding, it really kind of speaks to my current role in the Army too, because the whole idea of priest, patriot, and recruiter, and that's what I do. I bring priests into the Army.
That's great. And wasn't that so Uncle Sam? I just remember seeing him on photos. I didn't really know what he was doing, but I knew that he was a thumbs up, and he really wanted me to join him.
There it is.
So you and I met on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's like legit. Like he's been on Fox News, he's been on CBS talking about the role that you do, and now you're hanging out with little old us to talk about what you're doing."
I'm glad you bring that up because Fox News, and I did it CBS News New York, which was a big market, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and those are great spots for leverage to things like this. I really believe that in my current role as a priest recruiter, to get down to the grassroots and to get down to the eaches of individuals who are interested in being a priest and being a soldier, it's shows like yours that are really gonna produce the vocations and the leads that ultimately that's really what I'm looking for. The other stuff is great leverage. It's a nice splash. It's very attractive, but it adds to the legitimacy of our mission. But I'm talking right to your audience, Taylor. I know you have young men that are thinking about the priesthood, and maybe they have a heart for their country. And it's like, call me, get in touch with me through Taylor, or DM me on Instagram, and we'll have the conversation.
It's like, young men discerning. It's like, do I want to be in the military? Do I want to be a priest? It's like, why not both? We've got you covered.
Yes. Yeah. So I could give you a little bit of my own story, how that happened, if you want to hear it.
I was just going to ask you, because you said that you were, priest, patriot, and soldier, and like, which one of those came first for you? Like, I know you're a priest, so you have to say God's the most important. But like, in order of the story, what happened first? How do you become a priest recruiter?
I would say, well, so the way it all happened first was I had been an ROTC student. I was a scholarship recipient, and I wanted to be in the infantry. I just wanted to be an infantry officer. And the needs of the Army ebb and flow with the news cycle, So at the time, I thought I was going to be a full-time soldier, and I was going to be in the infantry. The first Gulf War back in '91 flared up when I was a senior. So all of the ROTC students that were a year older than me, they had deployed. They went to the desert, Saddam Hussein and Kuwait and all of that. That all happened without me. And by the time I got commissioned through the ROTC program, the war was over. And they were trying to downsize. They were trying to downsize so much. They offered reserve commissions to the top 10% of West Point graduates that year. That's how
my goodness.
desperate they were. Because and to just be quick about it, like with the 3 branches of service, you can't just stop building planes. You can't just stop building ships, but you can cut payroll on soldiers.
Right.
And that's what they do. That's how the government saves money. So that was where my heart for service really came in. And then it was about 8 years later, I wound up being a reserve officer. I was a school teacher, and I taught New York City public school. I loved what I did.
It sounds like going to war. I mean, teaching public school in New York City.
yeah. It was actually, I landed a plum. I had taught in some pretty rough areas in Brooklyn, and then on the North Shore of Staten Island. I wound up, by the grace of God, I wound up on the South Shore of Staten Island, which was a pretty plum assignment. And I was teaching computers at a time in which, like, I would like, okay, hey kids, listen, don't tell anybody, but I'm going to teach you how to pass notes in class today. It's called email.
So then you realized that kids weren't going to need to be taught the internet anymore because they were just going to grow up with it in the palm of their hands. So then you became a priest. What happened then? Because I'm here calling you father, not computer teacher.
So that was all going on, and it was all in its infancy. Nobody really saw that it was going to be like. I mean, there's more power on the phone that we're talking on than the computers I had. But I kind of got hit over the head. I would say it was a bit of a 1-2 punch. At about a year apart, I had the summers off. I was a school teacher, and I was taking these great long bicycle trips. I was a big cyclist. I rode a bicycle from New York to Los Angeles. I rode a bicycle from England. I took it to the coast of Dover, and then I took a hovercraft, and I toured all of Europe one summer. And that was the summer of conviction. I rode a bicycle from the coast of France in Normandy all the way. I went to Paris, then I went north. I went as far north as Amsterdam, and then I followed the Rhine River down Germany, over the Alps into Switzerland, and then into Italy. All this time as a tourist, I'm visiting churches, and I was embarrassed. I was kind of mortified that I was going into these churches, and I felt like a tourist in these Catholic churches.
Oh, yeah.
I felt very convicted. I was like, I need to start going to mass again. Like, what am I doing? And I just, that was I had fallen away from really any kind of regular attendance at mass. I had fallen away. I was barely going on Christmas and Easter, but that's where by the power of the Holy Spirit, I came home and I said, you know what am I doing? No, I'm going back. I got to go home. I got to go home to the church. So by the grace of God, I made a good confession. And then I committed myself like very earnestly to Sunday mass. And then then it just spiraled. It's like, well, why not daily mass? I'm like, daily mass? Like little old ladies go to daily mass.
Right.
I'm not going to go to daily mass with these little old ladies. But I did. It was about a year later. I started going to daily mass. And then to kind of keep it short, but I fell in love deeply and it was like, I was ready to get married. A young nurse. She was about my age. We were talking about marriage, and it was all on track, ready to go. And then it got derailed. It was like, no, not marriage, but priesthood. I'm like, what? Like, why?
Why?
And then the worst thing was, like, why? I want to have kids. I want to get married. And then the worst of it was when I finally had the courage to tell her, think about being a priest. And she's like, I could see that. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that from you.
That's always a tough conversation. I've heard of other priests, either priests or people who went to seminary and then maybe they left after. But like, that's a hard conversation because, like, from the girl's perspective, it's like, I'd rather be with no girl than be with you. You know, like, that's tough.
You know what? And it's excellent. That's a great way to put it too. But by the grace of God, and you know, I thank her. Her name is Dawn. I thank God for the gift that Dawn, that we had this relationship. Dawn and I had this relationship, and I'm so grateful for it because Dawn gave me the freedom. She knew how earnest I was with her. She knew I wasn't playing games. It wasn't like, oh, I'm thinking about being a priest, and I just wanted to ghost her. But she kind of, I really believe, not to get too deep about this, but I think she saw the vocation in me as well. And she trusted me. And she said, you know what? Until you're convinced, I know you love me. And I think I communicated to her, and I think she believed me. I was like, it was one or the other. Either we're getting married or I'm going to become a priest.
Yeah.
That's it. And she trusted me. And we dated another 6 months. And then I really became convinced. And I was like, I got to go. And that was, that's going on. Oh my goodness. That's about 27 years ago. I'll be 20 years a priest here we are in the new year. So I'll be 20 years a priest in just a few months.
Wow. That's awesome. So you, I don't know how you become a military priest. So like, were you a diocesan priest first and then become the military, or is the military out here training priests?
Oh, very good. That's an excellent question. Thanks for giving me the platform to talk about this too, because it's so mysterious. Like, how do you, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, Space Force, VA hospitals, they're just federal entities. They have needs. They have needs to serve the patients, the airmen, the sailors, and the soldiers. So they look for what is called an endorser, an endorsing agency that they can get in a relationship with, and they know that this endorsing agent is legitimate in their provision of the First Amendment and the First Amendment rights of our people, and they're legit. They're not some radical group that's against the United States or is trying to infiltrate the United States. They're legitimate religious leaders. So the Catholic Church is very special. It's the only, and I can't find another one, and I've been recruiting for a year now. This is the only religious group in which it has one endorsing agent. There are many endorsing agents for Baptists, for Methodists, for different conferences of Lutheranism, and then even Jewish rabbis and Muslims have different endorsing agents. But we only have one endorsing agent for the Archdiocese of the Military, and that's Archbishop Broglio. Archbishop Timothy Broglio is the endorsing agent. So here it is to try to just give it to you very succinctly. Archbishop Broglio, who is an archbishop, he's a Catholic archbishop, and he's a religious leader. He is not a part of the federal government at all, but he signs a Department of Defense form, a DD 2088, and it's his signature that then becomes the authorizing piece of paper to the Army. The Army looks at this piece of paper and says, well, we know Broglio. We trust Archbishop Broglio. We know him. We don't know you, but he says you're legit.
Right.
On the religious end, come this way. We're going to go over here. And now we're going to go eyes, ears, nose, throat. Can you jump? Can you skip? Can you hop? Can you, background checks? We're going to fingerprint you. We're going to do all this other stuff. So it's like it's a razor's edge between the church and the government, that DD 2088.
So my question is, so like for a guy listener, like I coach track here at our local Catholic school. So like a young man's interested in becoming a military priest, but there's this one bishop, but it doesn't sound like he has his own seminary. So how do you sign up? I'm thinking of like a young man at the parish. Like, how does he get to where you are?
So they call me first. That's first. They get in touch with me first. Because here's the thing. The Archdiocese for the Military serves all those entities I mentioned. Yeah. Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines, and VA hospitals. We serve all those entities. But the Archdiocese of the Military has no priests of their own. Every
Really?
priest
Okay.
is on loan to the services from the generosity, God bless the generosity of all these other ordinaries, these bishops and archbishops and religious provincials. So the Franciscans, the Jesuits, they all have the opportunity to contribute as well. I'm working with a Redemptorist right now that, please God, will bring him in because of his superior's permission. But they're on loan until they're not, really. I mean, there's a minimum obligation of about 36 months. But my cell phone could ring after this interview, and my own ordinary could say, "Hey, I need you to come home." And I mean, it doesn't happen that quickly. There would be another conversation, obviously, with Archbishop Broglio, who is deeply invested in trying to serve the needs of his diocese. So, that's going to be another conversation at another level between the bishops. But he has no priests of his own. We're all on loan from our respective dioceses. But here's the reason why I want your guys to call me first. I'll give you this as an example. It's a good way of looking at it. Every bishop has their needs to serve their diocese, right? So what diocese are you out in Texas? Austin. So the Bishop of Austin, he has his needs, and he has his seminarians and his priests that fill those needs. So for me to just go out to Austin and say, and start prospecting priests there without the bishop's permission, that's kind of bad form. It's like, wait a minute, hold on. First of all, who are you? And why are you talking to my priest for the army?
I have a paper from Bishop Broglio. It doesn't work as well there. Yeah.
No. So it's like, so why am what am I doing fishing in his backyard?
Sure.
And that's a legitimate. That's legitimate.
You're stealing fish that have already been caught.
which is why exactly why you hit it. I want to go upstream. My best success is to go upstream because Taylor knows a guy in his parish who's just thinking about it and hasn't spoken to anybody else. Now I can show up and say, hey, this guy wants to be in the army and he wants to be a priest. Are you willing to do this? Like, can we pair up and we could what we call co-sponsor? We could have a co-sponsorship relationship where Archbishop Broglio will pay for half of his education, his local bishop will pay for half, and we'll share his priesthood. Because the day is going to come. I mean, for every priest, we will all be too old, too sick, or too dead to serve in the military.
Little too dead. Not too much too dead. Just a little too dead.
But I'm going to go home. So, like, for example, for me, I'll be 20 years a priest this year. I'll be 55 years old. I only have about 9 years of service left in me. And then I'll go home and I'll serve my priesthood back in the Archdiocese of New York. And I'll be jazzed and excited to do it with all of the leadership experience that the Army has given me and all of the practical, life experience that I can bring back to my diocese. I served for 10 years in the Archdiocese of New York. I was a pastor in the Bronx. Shout out to Holy Cross. And I did that for 10 years. And now I've been on loan for 20 years. And please God, I go back and I'll do another 10 years until I retire from the priesthood overall.
Yeah.
Administratively, that is.
Sure.
Do your listeners understand that? I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about that, what it means for a priest to retire, because that can sound a little strange.
Yeah. I think you answered my what was my next question, which was like, I didn't know about the co-signing thing. Cause I would imagine like talking to one of these young guys that I know or whatever of like, they want to do the military and the priesthood, but like I've been around enough priests to know that obedience is actually the hardest of the promises or the vows that you guys make because, things can be difficult but like I know that I would be, and I would imagine most people would be frustrated if like, hey, I want to be in the military and a priest, but then they get done with the seminary and their home bishop's like, nah, you're with me. It's like, that would be frustrating. So I didn't know about the co-signing thing. And that sounds like it's a process that works.
It is a process that works because it's right up front that, okay, this young man, I'm working with an applicant right now who he's in the Army, but now he's going to pause from the Army for a little bit and he's going to be educated to become a priest and he'll come back in the Army. And everybody understands that. His bishop understands it. The Archbishop of the military understands it. And it's great. It's great. It didn't work that way for me. I had been military. I didn't know about the co-sponsorship program. And I had actually discerned I was kind of torn between a monastic vocation for myself as well as this attraction to, it just made sense to me. I'm like, well, I'm in uniform. Like, we need priests in the army. Like, why don't I do that? That was I was pretty confident that that's what was going to happen under my current Archbishop, God rest him, Cardinal O'Connor, at the time that I was in seminary. But then he passed away. I got another Cardinal Archbishop who was not open to the idea. God love him, Cardinal Egan, he ordained me, but he was like, no, I need you here. And I was like, okay. And I served him for 10 years. I was 4 years of parish priest, and then I was 6 years a pastor for him. It was in my 5th year as a pastor for him that he retired. And that's when everything changed.
Right.
And then God bless Cardinal Dolan, who's my current Archbishop. And I said, I'm not getting any younger. I said, I really want to do this. And he was like, yeah, he says, I think you should. I think you'd be a good fit. And I'm so blessed. I'm so grateful to him. This is now my 10th year it's big deal. Comes this June of 24, half of my priesthood will have been in the army.
That's cool.
I did half of my priesthood at home, and I'll have done half of my priesthood in the army.
That's really cool. Let's close with this. There's a story that you wanted to share about another priest who had some military connections that you wanted to share with us. Why don't you kick us off?
Oh yeah, sure. So Father Emil Capon is he was a priest in the army who served in the Korean War, and his cause for sainthood is up. And I encourage your viewers to look him up, Father Emil Capon, and he gave of himself in his priesthood to his soldiers in the suffering of concentration camps under the oppression of the Chinese during the Korean War. And his body was thought to have been just gone, like as he died in the prison camp. But his story was told by so many faithful prisoners who survived because he took the risk to steal food for them and to minister to them. His body had disappeared for many years, but then his body was rediscovered only about, I think it's less than 10 years ago, that it was found because of DNA evidence and all of that. Cool. It was found, and his body was largely found intact and interred in Hawaii, and it was brought home. And his story is coming up in a movie that we're going to, I'd love to come back and talk to you about it, Fighting Spirit. And it's an inspirational story of what it is to give yourself and sacrifice to God and country so completely as Father Emil Capon did.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. I had heard of his name, but I didn't know that he was military. I'd heard the name just because it's fun to say, and then I knew that his cause for canonization was up, but I didn't even know that he had a military connection. So that's really neat. Yeah. So I know on Instagram, fr.UncleSam is a great way for people to get connected with you. And just because they call you doesn't mean they're locked into a 20-year contract. It's just a conversation.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks for having me on the show. And if you want to have a conversation with me and we can talk about it, no strings attached, you can get me on Instagram, fr.UncleSam. You can direct message me there. You can also email me at priestrecruitereast@gmail.com. And you want more information on chaplaincy just in general, a great resource is goarmy.com/chaplain. And we'll have a conversation, whether you're a young man thinking about the priesthood, or maybe you're a priest who wants to come in the army. Get in touch with me and we can talk some more.
That's great. Well, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it, Father.
Thanks so much.
All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Greetings, dear listener. This is your conscience speaking. It's incredibly terrifying that your conscience sounds exactly like Taylor. But here it is. This is what your conscience sounds like in 2024. And your conscience is telling you that you've heard a lot of ads from that Taylor guy saying, hey, if you like the show and you enjoy it and you listen to it pretty often, you should probably support it with your money. And, it is the new year, and you probably got that promotion or that Christmas bonus, and you're like, hey, I need to do some more tithing. Well, I, as your conscience, am saying you should go to fortecatholic.com/donate. Donate a one-time gift to ease your conscience. If that doesn't work, you can try a monthly gift of $5, $10, $25, $50, $100 a month. And me, as your conscience, I'm telling you that this is all tax deductible, because obviously I'm a conscience, I would know that. And even more than making the government happy, it also makes the Lord happy. Because giving to a Catholic charitable organization gets you 17 minutes out of purgatory. We all know this. because I'm your conscience and now we are we. This is become very confusing, but you should donate. ForteCatholic.com/donate. Thank you, and you're welcome, because I'm your conscience. Welcome back to Forte Catholic, and welcome back to Keith Redacted of Grassroot Catholic over on the old Instagram. You're a few other places too. You've got a YouTube channel. I think there's a whole website too, huh?
Website? No, I don't have a website.
No website. We gotta fix that.
This is not 2005. Okay, Taylor.
I have a website. That's the only thing I have that's more popular than yours. Your YouTube's more popular than mine. Your Instagram's more popular than mine. My website is popping compared to yours.
Exactly.
Yeah. So another thing, when I think of topics for like our typical co-hosts, I always like to match topics with certain people. And I had this topic like in my notes app for like a month and a half. And it was one of those ones that was like, it was always the fourth topic. Typically we cover 3 topics on a show. It was always the fourth topic. And then 3 other topics would pop up. It became the fourth topic again. So we just kind of never got to it. And I think it's because God knew that I was going to ask you to come on the show and that we were going to be able to talk about this. So I want to talk about piety and reverence because I had this thought during Advent. It's the season of darkness preparing for the light, right? And I was kind of feeling like that it matched pretty well with kind of how I was feeling. Maybe a little bit of this winter depression or kind of slowing down. And because we're slowing down, I start dealing with maybe some of the traumas and the physical exhaustion from the year. Like it was a busy year. A lot happened this year. I finally started slowing down. It's just like, whew, right? And so I think whenever we get into times like that, both like physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, when we're just kind of tired, it's not like anything was terrible going on. It's just I was just exhausted. So I realized both in like a lot of like my human relationships, like with like my wife or my kids or family, friends, whatever, it's like I love them. And like we talk about love being a choice, but I wasn't like feeling it with them and with God. And I think that my relationship with God was probably the most emblematic of this issue of like, I was still going to mass. I still went to confession, but it was like almost solely out of like, I know I should be doing this. I know it might even need help in this situation. I'm still going to mass. I'm choosing to pray. I'm choosing to read my Bible, choosing to go to confession, but like the love wasn't there. So I was just in this place of like, yes, when we don't feel it, we have to choose love. But I felt like I was kind of stuck in that spot for a few weeks, maybe even a month. So I looked up, I think it was from a homily. They're talking about like our devotion to the Lord. And I was like, I've been saying yes to the Lord, but I'm not sure if like my heart's in it. And when I hear devotion, I think like, oh, my heart is fully in this. So you talk a lot about piety and devotion. So, and you're just a Catholic human male. So I figured you've gone through this as well. So, I want to hear your thoughts on, because I'm sure you found yourself in this situation of like, I'm doing this because I know it's right for me, but I may not be feeling it. And what did you do to get out of it? Because we're at this time of New Year's and everybody's trying to do new things, and I would like to get out of it, and I would like for you to help me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wish I could say I've had this happen to me, but I'm perfect. And
all right, that's our time.
So,
that's our time. We got it.
No, I think it is sometimes a good thing to be in a spiritual rut or spiritual dryness, because that gives us the opportunity to kind of figure out like what's missing from the picture here. What do I need to work on a little bit more to grow even more in love with God or our spouses or our children? And, thinking back, what really helped me out, and I wish I would have had one sooner. I just didn't even know even though these existed. Once again, as a millennial, this is something that I don't know if it's new or it's old, but having someone to talk to you like a spiritual director, someone to help, like, hey, what's your prayer life like? Oh, it's this, and this. Okay, how about you add this and maybe remove this, or maybe do something like that, like someone who can guide you through said spiritual dryness or a spiritual rut, or like I said, just kind of going through the motions. It's important, which is good. The fact that we're choosing to do these things because we know it's important, but not getting the feeling out of it, or having that, maybe that moments that we've had previously that we really know we love God and having that, I don't know, that feeling. So I think spiritual direction has been helpful for me. And like I said, didn't even know that was a thing. And by the time I got to it, I'm like, why haven't I done this sooner?
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation, is to know that this is an opportunity for growth and potentially have someone walk you through it.
That's what I hoped this would be. You're the guy.
Don't listen to me.
I don't go to spiritual direction or podcasting. I don't go to spiritual direction or counseling. I just podcast once a week with a person further along in the spiritual life than me.
It's therapeutic,
right? Yeah. And then very rare experience for counseling is I get feedback on my sessions. People are like, "Oh, you suck!" in the comments. It's great.
Growth for humility. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to play a little. I feel like because you talk about reverence, and a lot of times that's involved with like a reverent mass, and a lot of times you're like, "What?" I've seen you post videos about like, what do you mean by reverent mass? So. I've seen you do those videos. People can go watch them at Grassroot Catholic on Instagram and not a website. But I wanted to ask you about like, what does reverence look like for you outside of Mass? Like, how do you show reverence of God outside of like when you're just living your day-to-day life or in your prayer life or whatever?
So what does reverence look like in just everyday life outside of Mass? I would say is just how you're acting with others. So, it's something that I'm currently working on, especially during like work, where it's like, maybe you have a bad situation or you have a bad scenario go down and you're just complaining. Like you're complaining to your coworkers about it. And that's all you seem to do is just complain about all these calls. And you're kind of like being sarcastic, maybe curbing that, biting your tongue and offering that up to God. That's helped me a lot. And that people will start to notice, like, he doesn't complain about a lot. It doesn't mean you have to be like the perfect smiley, like fake person that's walking around, but, try not to, cuss, swear words, trying to implement prayer during your day too helps with that, because you're working for your family, which, in turn is essentially working, supporting your family. In how do I want to put it? Like you're not only just for family, but also for God. So I'd say that.
Yeah, that's good. I went down this like rabbit hole on, Wikipedia has Wikipedia or dictionary.com, one of the two, right? Where like the definitions always have words that I need defined in the definitions, right? So I just kind of like kept clicking, right? So I went from like, what does it mean to be devoted? Because I was like, devoted and love, I think a lot of times they're synonymous, but for whatever reason, I was like, I feel like I'm in love and choosing love for God, my family, relationships, friends, whatever. But I didn't feel like devoted. Like devotion kind of feels like, oh, like I'm all in. Like I think of like a guy in a military movie laying down his life to protect his love or tribe or whatever. Like that's devotion, right?
Yeah.
And so I looked up devoted, and it was like religious fervor, piety, and act of prayer. So then I was like, okay, well, what is like fervor? Again, it's like, I was thinking about like sports. Like we watched a lot of sports over the break. There's a lot of bowl games and football and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I feel fervor for those games. And it's like, why do I feel fervor cheering for these teams or whatever? It's like, one, I'm invested like literally financially. Like I bet $5 on this game, $10 on this. So like I'm financially invested, right? But then also it's like, why do I care about like the NFL? It's like a lot of times like it's because I'm connected to the storylines. I've been listening to podcasts all week about like, oh, this person's having a great year. That like we love sports because of the stories, right? It's like, okay, the outcomes of the game are great, but it's like, oh, this guy has a comeback story. Like that's what everybody talks about every week. Oh, this guy came back after 2 years, or this guy came back after injury, or this guy, went and scored a touchdown and gave the ball to his mom. It's like that's why we love sports, right? So I was thinking about like, okay, investment financially, but then also investment is like, I've given my time to this. I've paid attention to this. So I was like, oh, it's almost like the thing that I've been doing, even though it hadn't felt great, of like saying yes to God is the thing that will get me out of it. Because how do I get invested? Is I stay connected to the story, like reading the Bible, reading the catechism, going to mass, whatever. And then like what will make me care is like it's the stories. It's like my story, my involvement with the church, my involvement with God. So that was religious fervor, and then it got to here's what. So that was kind of encouragement, like the encouragement of like keep doing what you're doing. But then also the next word was the challenge, because I looked up reverence, and like the word under reverence was solemn respect, formal, dignified, serious. So I was like, okay, we finally got to words that don't really explain me at all. Like this is, I'm not a formal person. I'm not a dignified person. I'm not a serious person. And solemn respect, I think I can do that. And I think here's kind of where I found myself. And I mentioned earlier, we're going to have these two dichotomies of two good things, right? Like we have God as King of the universe, who we owe all of our respect to and all of our reverence to, and we should bow to him whenever we see him. But then we also have like Jesus came as one of us at Christmas, walked with people, ate with people, is our friend, right? So it's like we have to constantly be balancing those two. We can't do all of one. We can't just have Jesus as a friend and do whatever the heck we want and never treat him as king. But if we only treat him as king and never as friend, then like we're missing the entire like Jesus part of the story, right? So we have to find this balance. And I think my personality, just kind of how God made me, I tend to, when I'm making a mistake, kind of trend towards the Jesus is my friend and we're hanging out, and lose the dignity, the reverence, that sort of thing. My assumption is when you're balancing thing, you might go on the other side. Is my assumption correct?
I try. That's a really good point. I try to keep a balance of, and I typically do. Yeah, I treat Jesus as the king first and friend second, and I try to keep that balance, because you're right. You don't want to like go one way or another, because it's not as balanced and maybe not as feel as like an authentic relationship or something. But yeah, I'd say try to keep it balanced. Yeah.
So when you find, so the problem that I'm having of kind of finding myself drifting more into like my natural state of like maybe a little bit more friend than king, like, I don't even know. Do you ever find yourself maybe falling away from seeing Jesus as a friend or whatever? Does that, I don't even know if the question makes sense, but do you have the opposite problem of what I have is what I'm asking?
Probably. I mean, so when I'm treating Jesus as king, it's usually during mass. Like it's that formal ceremony, like he's the king. I'm going to, follow the rubrics, be reverent. But if it's in like my everyday prayer life, I'm like, Jesus, please help me. You're my friend. You're also my king. Like, and then have that, the conversational that you would have with a friend outside of mass.
Right. So I was thinking about like my personal prayer, right? And that's what I wanted to ask you about is like, I know like you and I have talked before about like, I feel like I understand what you mean and what probably the church means about like being reverent in mass, but like in personal prayer, like when you're on a random Tuesday evening or morning, whenever you pray, right? What is reverence and like these words that I tend to be lacking in, this formal, dignified, serious. How can I make my normal prayer life a little bit more formal, dignified?
I mean, formal, obviously, and that's tough because it's going to vary depending on someone who's single versus someone who has like young kids running around like crazy. Like
I don't care about that. I'm asking about me.
It's all about you, Taylor.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to the basics, like some of the prayers, is always a good thing. Cracking open that old Bible, that I think sometimes, and I do it too, I try to think too much about my prayer life to the point where I get overwhelmed. Like I've got to do this novena and I forgot to do one day and now I have to do it all over again. And now I like all my rest of my prayers that I do is just going out the window. I think here it is. I think this is what it is. Spending time in silence and opening your ears to listen. I think I don't do that fairly enough than I should. That might be more important than just going through the ropes and just saying all these prayers, depending on where you're at. Obviously things can change. Your life changes. Prayer life may need to change with it, which is why it's so important to get a spiritual director and not me, Taylor. I'm not your spiritual director.
I think, but I think you just became it, because I think that's exactly what it means. When you said more silence, well, now you're getting into my wounds with my spiritual director. The last one quit too. But I think you're right, because I think when I open my mouth, I'm the court jester, so I'm not dignified. But when I shut up, I can be pretty dignified. I can look pretty dignified when my mouth is closed. So I think you're probably right. So here we are in the new year, thinking about these minor tweaks, because again, it's not like I was murdering people and never praying. It's like I was saying yes to the things, I just didn't feel the fervor. And I think what's very interesting about what you said about the silence is a lot of times with my wife, like when because how long have you been married?
Almost 10 years.
Okay, cool. So we're right around the same. We're at 11, and like you get in these times where, especially like it's almost like Advent. These busy season, getting ready for Christmas. It's like we're busy. We're wrapping up. We're both wrapping up stuff for work. We're both literally wrapping things like for Christmas and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like it's a busy time, but like the times where I felt most connected to her was like we were just sitting silently, like doing something together, watching TV or watching a Christmas movie or whatever. And even though we weren't like talking, I wasn't saying much. It's like we still felt close in those moments. So I think you're right I think that's the thing that I'm going to take as my encouragement for the rest of the year. So thank you, spiritual director Keith Redacted.
You owe me.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I'll send you your hourly rate of $7.50 an hour for spiritual direction. Simony, a little bit of simony. So, what's new? What's coming up in the new year for old Grassroot Catholic?
I don't know, Taylor. What am I? I can't see in the future. No. I don't know. It's really, for me,
a website,
to figure out. Yes, I'm going to go back to 2005 and create a website. Okay. And it's just going to say Grassroot Catholic, and that's it. And then follow me on Instagram, and then that's it. Because I don't know what am I going to put on a website, Taylor?
Content.
What content?
Like from Instagram? Daily videos. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. They might as well just go to Instagram at that point.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, though. I've had to like turn down a lot of invites to certain things, which is kind of a bummer, but it's just stage of life. Like I'm having to sacrifice some things to be with my family as far as a newborn and whatnot. So I'm going to take it easy for 2024. I think I'm going to like kind of start building momentum back up, because I cannot keep up with posting every single day in this stage of life. So I think it's going to be more of like an interior rebuilding of personal stuff, and then hitting it hard maybe in the following year.
So what you're telling me is that your Christmas gift to me is giving smaller creators on Instagram like me a chance, and you're going to take a little bit of a back seat in 2024.
No,
thank you. That's
not
very
a
kind.
chance. I'm still going to post. I'm not giving you the full reins there. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not packing it up. I'm just going to like take it back a little bit. So,
all right. Well, I was going to tell everybody to go follow you, but I guess we should wait until 2025.
How dare you? No, you can. Like I said, Taylor, I'm still post. Get out of here. I'll still post, just not at my breakneck speed that I've been doing for the last 2 years. So
at Grassroot Catholic on Instagram, for some no apparent reason at all on Twitter /X, you're Grassroot Catholic without a certain vowels. It's very confusing. You're very hard to find.
Okay. Twitter is really strange because it wouldn't let me, for whatever reason. I think it was just the amount of words or letters. It was like breaching. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to take out? I guess the A and an S and maybe an O or two. It just worked out that way. So.
It's rough. It's real rough. I'm like, who is this person talking to me? I'm like, oh, I think it's Keith.
Grassroot Keith. Yeah.
Grassroot Keith. Mm-hmm. You didn't have enough money to buy the vowels.
No, not there yet.
Well, that's good. All right. Well, look forward to it. Don't look forward to it, I guess. But go hit the follow button. So when he posts once every other day as a big change this year, you can stay connected. Keith Redacted, thanks for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun.
All right. Well, big thanks to you. Big thanks to Father Uncle Sam. We hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode. I will be back next week. He'll be back in probably a year and a half because that's when we tend to do these things. See ya. Thank you all for watching and listening to today's show. I hope that you enjoyed it with our returning friend Keith and our new friend Father Peter Pomposello, old Mr. Uncle Sam over there. Make sure that you follow both of them over on Instagram. Get connected with them. They're great, great guys doing great things. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend. I mentioned that at the beginning of the show. You still haven't done it yet. And now this is your conscience speaking, saying you must share this with that Catholic person in your life, or that person who left the church and needs a good doorway back into Catholicism. Here it is. All right, back to being Taylor. Enjoy your week. Love you guys, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye.